Hey guys, welcome back to After Hours with me, Jimmy Thistle. It's absolutely blowing a hoolie out here at the moment. Storm Chandra has gripped the island, so I hope you can't hear that. But hopefully, my new kind of recording equipment is up to speed, and you can't hear a thing. I had to do a little bit of re-editing some of the older episodes due to a tune, the tune that I used on the original audio and then some of the video ones. The little jingle that I used was originally copyright free, and then suddenly whoever made it, whatever, decided that it wasn't copyright free. So then Spotify started taking down all my episodes, so I had to then go in and re-edit them and put in the new one that I have, which I own the rights to. So that's all that. But when I was going back, it was actually really interesting, and I was going through all of the episodes. It's a labour-intensive job to go through and take it out, splice it out, put it back in. But it was interesting listening to all of the episodes from Joe's all the way up, and just slowly listening and hearing how the sound has got better. You know, I've upgraded my mics. This is my new mic, and it's actually different from the one in Anna's episode tonight. Got this one as a Christmas present from my lovely mum. And dad, sorry. And it's it's a great mic, but it's just so interesting, like seeing those little incremental changes throughout the past year of, you know, changing little things like the camera's better, the sound's better. And I keep getting messages and emails from people saying, we can upgrade your sound and we can do this for you and let us do this. And of course that's going to cost money. But the thing is, I'm enjoying doing it myself. You know what? Like, you can still listen to Joe's episode and still get a lot from it. But obviously, the more and more I'm learning about this industry and what to do with podcasts, the more I'm enjoying it, you know, because this is all down to me and my kind of journey of learning podcasting and updating the equipment and, you know, and just getting better and better at it and making it better for you guys. And, you know, if people have been with me since the beginning, then hopefully you're hearing going, oh, well, yeah, you know, this is a bit crisper in the ear. So I just wanted to add that in because, as I say, I've had a few of these emails to say we can make your sound better, and they go into my episode and they take a splice of it and then they do it better. Yeah, don't get me wrong, it's better sounding, but I like to do it myself. So thank you very much to those people that are out there. But I'll continue to do it myself. So thank you. Sorry about the little bit of a waffle there. Today we've got Anna Donaghey, and I've heard her on the Big Drink Rethink podcast that she has, and she hosts, and it's just amazing. I'll talk about that at the end, because her the main thing that kind of got to me was when I was listening to the Big Drink Rethink was all about how she worked for an advertising firm, and it was about you know, having big board executive meetings with big alcohol companies in order to make them have growth in their industry. And what struck me when I heard that in the podcast was they're comfortable with the people that are drinking, that are problematic drinker. That's their biggest customer. They don't mind the middle of the road drinkers in their middle ages and all that. They're going after the young ones. They're going after, and although you're not allowed to be, you know, show evidence of doing that, that's what they're doing. And it's like this sneaky little nefarious ways of getting into the younger people's minds without actually showing that is what your intentions are, is just so evil in my mind. Now, I say Anna did work on these kind of with these clients, but you know, she's making amends for what she kind of regrets in doing that at the time. And she said she wouldn't have worked on cigarette firms, cigarette advertising campaigns if that was the put in front of her. She would have said no. But again, it's because we didn't really know the dangers. Still, people don't know the dangers of alcohol. So if you're put like with a big, large sum of money from an alcohol firm into your advertising firm to say, make me an advert, here's lots of money, of course you're going to go for it, because you're like, well, what's the harm? But actually Anna's now learning there is harm there. And, you know, she's kind of trying to do what she can to make amends, and I guess ease her mind on it. I'm not pointing the finger at Anna at all, because I'd have done exactly the same thing when I was in my 20s. Anna was, as we said at the beginning, Anna was kind of living the high life, and she loved, living in London, going out and drinking with friends till about 11 o'clock, then go home and then go back in and do the same thing, because it was a social aspect, like Anna's early life was, she had a bit of a idyllic almost childhood, and then went a bit off the rails when her parents split up at 16. But that was kind of how it was, and she didn't go massively off the rails, but although her mum thought she was, it was kind of, she still went to uni, had a great time at uni, got a really good job working for Rover, worked her way up through the factory, from the factory track work floor, up to management. And the way that she did it back in those days was that they had to, if you were doing a management scheme, you had to go and work from, the ground level up. And she loved it. And she would go out with all the kind of workers or colleagues to the pub, because the factory would shut early on a Friday, and they'd all go to the pub, and as she said, she's kind of, well spoken, from the home counties, I think. And obviously she was looking for acceptance, and that's where her kind of drinking kind of developed from. She was drinking from an early age, but that's where it kind of really started ramping up, because it was this acceptance, this kind of badge of honor type thing. And yeah, I mean, it's just a great episode. I loved having Anna on. Anna has got a new book out. I don't know if anyone read the Daily Mail article. I'll talk a bit about that at the end, but it was a great article she did, and her book, I think, came out on the 8th of January. So I haven't read it yet. It's in my inbox, my Audible list to listen to. So I'll get onto that as soon as possible. But yeah, it's called "What Are You Thirsty For?" and I'll put a link to it in the show notes. So yeah, but as I say, great episode. Thank you so much, Anna, for coming on, and see you guys at the end. Cheers. Anna, welcome to After Hours. How are you today?
I'm really good. Really good, thank you.
Good.
How are you?
Yeah, I'm really good, thanks. It's just a busy time. I mean, this will be out in January, February, so the listeners won't be getting the stress that we're kind of under at Christmas time, with it being a week away. So
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Whereabouts in the country are you?
I'm down just north of Bristol. So
right, okay.
Yep, down in the southwest. Not the very southwest, but just north of Bristol. I've lived down here for about the last 12 years or so.
Right. Yeah, no, I love Bristol. I mean, I used to live in London. Well, I lived all over the UK, but I'm now on the Isle of Man. So when I lived in London, we had friends in Bristol, and we go through there quite a bit. So
it's vibrant. It's a good city. It's really nice. I always say to people, I live at Bristol as a kind of reference point, but it's just north of. But it's a great place.
Cool. Well, so let's tell us a little bit about your childhood. Where you grew up and when you had your first drink, Anna.
So my childhood, in so much as it's worth starting when I was probably in my early teens, I was living just north of Bristol. So I've done a bit of a boomerang thing, because I was sort of brought up around these parts, and then I moved away for university and jobs, etc. Moved back down here about 12 years ago. Really good childhood. I was very lucky. I had parents who invested in my schooling, invested money, but invested time as well. Really sort of hands-on, interested, engaged parents as far as my schooling is concerned. And I had a very good childhood, good sort of family setup. Ripples and a few bumps along the way. My parents got divorced when I was about 16. And looking back now, I didn't behave very well around that. I went I went a bit off the rails. My mum would say I went very much off the rails, but that was my response to the situation. I was a bit angsty, a bit angry about the whole thing.
And I think it's quite a difficult age. I mean, any age. I mean, my parents split up when I was 6, but I don't really have that many memories of them together as such. But when you're 16, you're trying to find your own way in the world. You've obviously, you've got puberty and all sorts of things going on as well. So it's a tough time for anyone. And then to have that thrown into the mix, it's got to be tough.
Yeah. Well, I'd already started probably being a bit rebellious with my behaviour, in that you mentioned my first drink. That was probably when I was about 15.
Right.
14, probably sneaking something about 14, but deliberately trying to get my hands on it. Probably around the age of 15, I had a boyfriend who was slightly older than me, not hugely, notably so, but a bit older than me. So my first cigarettes and my first drinks would have come via him in our sort of our attempts to try and sort of act adult and stuff like that. So by the time my parents got divorced and it was all a bit rickety for a while, I was probably a drinker, truth be told, or at least I knew that's how to sort of shut off for a while, take myself somewhere else. So yeah, it was a difficult time. But you know what? I'm not going to kind of harp on too much about it, because it's such a common event, isn't it? My response to it wasn't great, I have to say.
I mean, when I got sober, I kind of tried to delve into my past and try and find traumas, and I looked at my parents' divorce and things like that. And you know what? When I started drinking, I enjoyed it, and I enjoyed the escapism, I enjoyed the confidence, and I just enjoyed it. I don't think I was drinking to kind of escape any trauma at that point anyway. I was really just doing it because I enjoyed it, and I didn't know there was dangers to it really until I was probably way older. I didn't think this is going to affect me now, but yeah, I just kind of enjoyed it. And
I can relate to that. I can totally relate to that. I didn't, there was no way that I was consciously trying to run away from anything at that stage in my life. I had, like yourself, by the sound of it, Jimmy, I'd just found something which was a bit fun and a bit risky and a bit naughty, a bit adult. Something that I liked, I liked the feeling that it gave me. And I mean, I look back now as we do, because as you just said, we do the work when we stop drinking. And I was sort of questioning, well, why did? And I think quite honestly, I found the thing that made me feel good. If I was feeling bad, without being able to name those emotions at the time, I wasn't that articulate. I found the thing that made me feel good, and you kind of call off the search, don't you? Because why would you look any harder? And it was just there, and it was kind of encouraged and endorsed, not obviously by my parents, but by friends and peer groups and boyfriends. So yeah.
And we find that most of the people that we're hanging about with are kind of doing the similar thing. So everybody's doing it. I don't want to say, oh, everyone's doing it, so I had to do it. You know what I mean? A lot of the time I was probably an instigator as well, but I found little groups of people that were into the same things as me, and that was, in my word, socializing. It wasn't socializing, it was going out and drinking. And I'm sure there was people that I vaguely knew at school that were off doing different hobbies and and kind of developed themselves that way. I didn't really do that. I just kind of thought, well, my weekends are going to be my weekends. I mean, obviously I'm talking a little bit later on in my kind of, late teens and 20s, where if somebody said to me, what do you like doing? I would have said socializing, but that meant
Drinking.
going out and getting wasted and getting drinking. Yeah. But I found it as being like, I'm a social butterfly, and I had different groups of friends. The different groups of friends were so that I could find someone that was always up for going out. If one group was like, oh no, we're staying in, we're saving a bit of money, I would be like, right, we'll go and find someone else. Yeah,
but I can see now though how if you become a drinker at a relatively early age, then any other hobbies or any other pursuits have got quite a lot to live up to. if they're going to knock drinking off the pedestal. So I'm agreeing with you in the fact that, you know, your other friends might have had hobbies, or they might have had passions that they were pursuing. But I think I think once alcohol has kind of entered into your life and got itself into a bit of a grip with you, your world does become a bit smaller. I mean, mine became hellishly small over a longer period of time. But even at that age, I can see that I probably wasn't going out and doing some of the other stuff that my friends were doing, or, you know, I'd lost my passion in sport and stuff like that because I preferred to drink. I just preferred to drink. So yeah, interesting, isn't it?
Looking back, it's quite sad. And you know, I was talking to some people in a group meeting the other day that I don't have any regrets, because I did have a good time, but the only regrets I have is mostly to do with the emotional upset that I caused, like family and friends and loved ones. But other than that, do you know what? I did have a good time. But yeah, there was probably other things that I could have developed. You know, I was doing photography in my 20s, and I was quite good at that. But then when the drinking took hold, that just kind of took a back seat, and it didn't really develop it as much as I could until I got sober, and then I started doing it again, and, you know, was quite successful with that. But it's crazy that whole chunk of like nearly 20 odd years where I was just not, I was just on a kind of plain sailing kind of thinking, yeah, everything will take care of itself as long as I know what I'm doing this weekend or where my wine is coming that evening. It's madness. So how was your kind of late teens? Did you go to university?
I did. Oh yeah, I really stepped up my drinking game at university. Yeah, I did.
Well, this is the thing that I speak to a lot of my guests, and it's like Freshers Week is still a thing. You know, it's basically people that have just left home. A lot of them, like 90%, have just left home, still wet behind the ears, can barely boil pasta. And the universities are saying, here you go, here's a week where we're going to throw the cheapest booze possibly at you. It's just madness in this day and age.
Yeah, it is. It still goes on. I mean, I had an absolute blast at university, I have to say. I mean, you know, I suppose I'd already got the drinking bug, and it was just, like many who go to university, Freshers Week was just like, oh, come on, you know, this is going to set the pace, set the tone. And it kind of carried on.
Well, you're an adult now as well, so you can do it legally, and you've got your own place, so nobody's stopping you. I mean, I didn't go to university at that age, but I had friends that did, and I was doing college, but I was still staying at home. But I would go and stay with them in halls of residence and do the Freshers Week, and I would just basically hunker down on a floor without a sheet or anything. I would just pass out basically. So I did kind of enjoy that lifestyle at that point, had it been that I wasn't actually at uni myself. But it
was never questioned, and I just when I was at university, I kind of had 2 years study. Well, I did a course which took me to Italy each year, and that was that was brilliant, because I basically, I got the best of kind of Brighton. I was at university in Brighton. I got the best of Brighton in the summer, and then I went for the other half of the year to Turin in North Italy, and then I kind of went. I felt like I had sort of graduated from drinking cheap, sort of shitty stuff, whatever I could get my hands on at university,
Lambrini or whatever,
to drinking. You know, I was in the home of Shinzano and martini and aperitifs and vaguely decent wine, and it was just like, oh, hello,
sophistication drinking.
It was, you know. So I had a really good time at university, and I not for 1 minute did I kind of look around and think I was doing anything abnormal by drinking what I was drinking. I was, you know, pacing myself with other people, and everyone was very happy to do this. I don't think I knew a single non-drinker. University, looking back, I genuinely don't. I mean, obviously there would have been people who maybe didn't drink with, you know, quite the same gusto, but it was all very permissive and very standard.
It's just your peers around you are doing it. Even the people that are maybe not doing it quite as much as yourself, or you know, I'm sure there's probably people that were doing it more than you as well, but everybody's kind of involved. I would say it's a very small fraction that aren't having a good time at university, because it's that time where it's like, right, this is the time where you have your sow your wild oats, you have your fun, and then, you know, the real world's the rest of your life. So you
I
know.
think it's interesting looking back, because I think that's the first time I've ever thought about it, that I didn't know a single non-drinker. But I don't. I mean, I'm obviously, we know that birds of a feather kind of flock together, and if you're into drinking and you're into socializing in pubs and nightclubs, and go around to your mates' houses and getting wrecked as your sort of flavor of socializing, then you're obviously seeking out the people who also want to do that. You're not part of the chess club or the or the ornithology club or whatever, who may have been full of non-drinkers, but I wouldn't have been there. So it's it's a little bit self-selective, I'm sure, but I think wherever.
Sorry, go on.
No, I was going to say, whatever stage of life you're at, I would have always gravitated towards the drinkers, because that's what I was. So that's who I would have considered to be, my people.
Yeah, I honestly totally agree, and I've spoken about it a few times. I think that back in the day, if someone had come up to me at a party or something, and I'd have maybe said like, "Oh no, what are you drinking, or what are you up to," and all that, and they might have said, "Oh, I don't drink," I would have probably not been long for that conversation and then moved on to someone new. Do you know what I mean? And looking back, it's obviously quite a rude kind of thing to do, but I'd have been like, what am I going to talk to this person about? Which is quite sad and narrow-minded in its own way. But I guess now that I am sober, I don't know if I do notice it, but we go out and a few of our friends are drinkers and all that, and I'm not super close to them as I am to certain people that I know that don't drink, if that makes sense. And it may be that they're doing the same thing as me, because their lifestyle is drinking and partying or whatever, and they're like, well, this guy doesn't do that anymore, so but it's interesting. So what did you do after uni? What was your course at uni? Sorry, what was that you were doing that took you to Italy?
I didn't do as well in my A levels as I should have done. Mainly on account of the fact that I wasn't particularly, abiding by the school rules by this time. And I went to Brighton. It was Poly at the time, now the University of Brighton, and I did a European Business and Technology course. And it was cool. The European business part of it was, business studies. The European part of it was run in conjunction with the Polytechnic of Turin. And the technology part, as it turns out, had a heavy bias on the car industry. So sponsors of the course were Rover Group, as it existed at the time, working in conjunction with any number of the automotive manufacturers in Turin, like Fiat and Alfa Romeo and stuff like that. I didn't do an awful lot of research. I went along and I went for the interview of the course, and they said, what interests you about going to Italy? And I was like, ooh, hello. And I liked cars. So I was kind of like, all right. It was
ticks all the boxes.
Yeah, it was absolutely brilliant. And as I said, it was 4 years. And when I left, by the time I left, end of my fourth year, I had done a very successful work placement at Rover in Birmingham, and they'd sponsored my fourth year.
Oh, wow, cool.
They'd said, you're all right, we'll have you back. Will you come back and work for us? And I was like, yeah, okay. I've always been looking for a job and all that sort of stuff. I had enjoyed it a lot, and I went back as a graduate to work at Rover. So that's where I started my career, and I stayed there. Yeah, I stayed there for about 6 or 7 years and worked variously in logistics and manufacturing. It was a blast, Jimmy. Those were the days when you had a graduate program and you had to move around the different functions.
Right.
And I did 3 months.
So from like the bottom up type thing, so that you're getting a whole idea of the
So even if you're on some kind of management fast track nonsense, you had to work on the track. You had to work the night shifts. You had to know what went into the actual manufacturing side of building a car. And I loved it. And I loved the night shifts, and I loved it. But this is where, when I do look back at my drinking, this is where it became real kind of fitting in, morphing into my surroundings, wanting to be accepted. So there was me with my kind of home counties accent, going, shoulder to shoulder with the most amazing, brummy workmates on the track. And I just wanted to be in the gang. And
Yeah.
this gang, would the car assembly blocks, the production lines would close at midday on a Friday, and everyone would just pour out of the factory into all the pubs around, Longbridge and Selly Oak and places in Birmingham, and drink and drink and drink and drink and drink. And I was very happy to be part of that.
Yeah, yeah. You're getting invited along, doing your like chameleon drinking, as I call it, because you're kind of
Exactly.
wanting to be accepted. So you can, I can talk the talk and act the act for whatever I need to go
Yeah.
and drink in the day. Yeah.
Yeah, and no one ever coerced me. I was never conscious of the fact that that was what I was doing myself. If somebody had said to me at the time, "Oh, you're just trying really hard to fit in," I'd have said, "Oh, I'm not. I love it."
Yeah, you love it. This is not for you to get further up in the company. This is because you enjoy going out drinking.
This
And I
was it.
guess doing that job on the track, it's hard, laborious work. So at the end of the day, especially on a Friday, you shut at 12. That's it. Narrow-minded. You want to get to the drink because that's what you
Absolutely.
deserve. That's
Yeah.
your reward.
And
Yeah.
it was camaraderie.
Yeah.
It was acceptance as well. It was a lovely feeling that although, they would have known that I'd been there on a graduate training scheme and was probably destined for sort of senior management or whatnot, they kind of took me under their wing. And it was vaguely amusing to them that I could drink 8 or 9 pints and not fall over and still play a decent round of darts, or beat them at least before the 3rd or 4th pint at pool, or that sort of stuff. So it was all
I'm sure the first couple of weeks would have been like, let's give Anna a go and see what she's like. Well,
Yeah.
a bit jovial, taking the piss bit. But then they're
Yeah,
like, oh
totally.
well, she's got the goods. She can keep up with us. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Can
exactly.
you imagine though if you'd come in the same scheme and you'd not been a drinker and not been going to the pub?
No,
You
I
wouldn't have
can't.
been accepted, would you?
Can't imagine it. No, it would have been very different. It would have been
It'd have
very
been a
different.
very different situation for you in that structure of
Because
camaraderie and whatnot.
suddenly my graduate sort of status and my home county's accent would have sounded judgy and pious and, oh no, I don't think so.
I'm
Do you know
not
what I mean?
drinking. I don't drink. I'm too
With
good for you.
you,
And it's crazy, isn't it? It's sad. I
isn't
know
it?
it's different times now,
Yeah,
and we're
yeah.
hoping that these stigmas and things are kind of dropping away by the bayside. But yeah, like I'm totally with you. I would have done, well, I did do exactly the same. I worked in many factories and I had to, like, there was one day, right, where I was working in this flat panel making factory
Yeah.
in, where were we? We were in near Huntingdon in Cambridgeshire. And this guy, we were out having a cigarette at the break time, and this guy went, can you roll joints? And I was like, yeah. I didn't really smoke that much weed anymore at that point. I'd given it up. I was still drinking heavily, but I wasn't doing that. And I said, yeah, there you go. And he went, oh, no. And he took one out of the hat and said, no, I've got one. That's for you. So I was like, and I didn't want to be this lame-o that didn't do it, so I sparked it up and took the whole thing. I was an absolute mess for the rest of the day, so much so that I think I ended up going home because I was just wrecked on it, But that's peer
imagine.
pressure, isn't it?
But it is, but I think, and I've said this, a number of times when I talk to people. I think a lot of the peer pressure, we tend to think of it as being other people going, go on, go on, go on. Actually, most peer pressure comes from us.
Yeah,
Most peer pressure comes from that little voice inside of us that says, if I don't do this,
yeah.
they're not going to like me, or if I don't do this, they're not going to invite me back again.
Yeah.
Which
He wasn't like a close friend or anything. It was just like at break time, having a cigarette. If I'd handed it back to him and said, listen, man, I'm working, no thanks, he'd have been fine. But
Yeah.
I felt that need to
Yeah.
impress and be one of the lads and all that. And it's horrible, isn't it?
But it is, but therein lies exactly what it is. It's you felt the need.
Yeah.
You had that need. You had that ache. You had that thing that needed to be fulfilled, rather than, he wasn't wrenching your arm up your back and going, come on. So it's interesting. There was never any sense of. I just think I needed to really belong at Rover. I think I needed that for a large part of my life, and it manifested itself at Rover, and then it manifested itself when I went into subsequent jobs afterwards. So yeah, it's a big one. It's a common human need. I mean, come on,
Of course.
it doesn't mark us out as being odd here. It's a sort of right there at the bottom of Maslow's hierarchy. You want to feel accepted. You want to feel safe. You want to feel,
Yeah.
like you belong. Like
You
you're
don't, you
not
want it, it's a quick way to fend off the anxiety that you might feel if you'd gone the other way or whatever. So it's like,
absolutely.
it's just, the quickest route of the electricity path. So,
It
we'll do
is.
what's easiest for us. And it's instant gratification and all of that. So,
Yeah.
yeah. And did you then work your way up through the ranks in Rover?
Yeah, I did. I did my graduate program. I became a manager. I can't remember at what point. I think maybe a couple of years in, I was working in logistics. I was
Mm-hmm.
doing it was really interesting time at Rover. I mean, it was before they were bought by BMW, and we were relaunching MG. We were
Oh, right.
relaunching
Yeah, yeah.
Mini. There was some really exciting stuff going on. And I went to a talk one day, a training thing, and it turns out that the guy who led it worked in marketing, and he said to me, "You need to come and work in marketing." So he kind of cherry picked me out of the course, if you like. And I said to him, "Well, I like the sound of it," and he said, "Well, I'll make it happen." So I went to work in marketing. And I sort of got into brand management as we were, rekindling the brands MG and Mini.
Yeah.
And I suppose the only reason I say that is it kind of rolled from there, because I stayed there for about 4 or 5 years, and by far the most interesting for me part of my job was working with the advertising agencies. I loved working on the marketing, the communication side of it. And that's where I moved next. When I left Rover, I headed more wholeheartedly into the advertising world. That was sort of set my path. I went first from there to Barclays Bank, where I had a torrid couple of years. I stupidly in my mind thought, if I go and work for an advertising agency now, I'm only ever going to work on car brands, which isn't how it works, obviously.
No, of
But
course. There's advertising, marketing everywhere, isn't there?
yeah,
Yeah.
but I thought to myself, I better go and get some more big industry experience. So I thought finance,
Yeah.
that's a big sector. So I went to work at Barclays, and I was their advertising manager for a couple of years. And then I thought, I didn't like that very much. And I went at that point, I moved to London, and I moved
Yeah.
to work at an advertising agency. And then that was where I stayed for the next 25 years.
But
So
that's
yeah,
like living the dream, isn't it? Advertising agency in London. That's like, you must have thought, I've made it. This is the,
yeah,
you know,
yeah. I did. I thought it was a lot of fun. It was a
yeah.
lot of fun, and
What are you, sorry, in your kind of mid to late 20s at this point about, or
I was late
late
20s.
20s?
I
Yeah. So you're
literally
living
only
in
finished work.
London.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I'd had a relationship breakup, and we'd been living together up in Warwick, and suddenly Warwick felt very small.
Yeah.
It's lovely though, Warwick. Nothing against Warwick, but it felt
No,
very
no, but
small.
when you're that age and if you've had a breakup, I'm imagining like the similar walks and people that you hang out with and all
Yeah,
that is
yeah,
involved,
yeah.
and yeah,
I
it can
needed
be tough.
I needed a bigger place to be.
Yeah.
So I it was simple for me. I knew I wanted to go and work in advertising.
Yeah.
So I managed to sort of orchestrate that, and I arrived in my late 20s down in London as a single girl, working in the agency world on a relatively decent salary for a single girl who's got no other responsibilities. And it was a blast. I thought I was living the dream, and
Yeah.
I think I was. I mean, a lot of my friends were like, "Oh my God, you lucky cow," but
It's tough. Don't get me wrong. I moved to
yeah,
London when
really,
I was
really worked hard. Really
30.
worked hard.
Yeah, I was 30 when I moved there, and it was like every night of the week. And
Yeah,
I remember the first couple of weeks I was there, because I was living with my partner at the time, and I'd not long moved to London, and I got this new job, and it was a good job in sales.
Yeah.
And I was working with these people, and one of them said, "Oh, let's go for a couple of drinks after work." So it was like a Tuesday night, and I phoned her and just said, "Listen, I'm just going to go out for a couple of pints and all that." She went, "Oh no, don't worry, we're over the other side of London. We're going out for a few pints." And I was like, "Oh, this is how it is then." Okay,
Yeah.
and that was it. Just carry on, you know.
Yeah. Well, I had I stayed with my brother, who was brilliant. He really facilitated the move for me, because I said to him, "Charlie, I've got a job, but I don't have anywhere to live." And he lived in Richmond at the time, so he said, "You can come and stay for a few weeks." I was nearly 2 years there. He was like, then he got a new girlfriend. He was like, "You need to move out. You need to crack off now." So he sort of forced my hand, as he damn well should have done, really. I bought a flat in Hammersmith, and I was very, very happy there. But I would literally get up in the morning, go to work, and get back to the flat at about 11 o'clock at night, because everybody does their socialising near to work, where their kind of nucleus of work colleagues are. And I was literally coming back to the flat. It made the weekends a bit more lonely, because, as I'm sure from your days in sales that you've just mentioned, you do your socialising with friends and colleagues after work. You don't necessarily know all your neighbours and stuff like that in London. So the weekends were a little bit more solus, so I'd have to zigzag around the city finding, going to see the friends that I did have down there. But mainly it was a very work-orientated social life. And they were my people. They were my kind of extended family and friends, really. So I also worked on a lot of international accounts, so I travelled a lot. So I worked on big brands or big houses of brands like P&G or Unilever, and we would maybe be we go all over the world, devising campaigns for them. So there were lots of airport lounges and free drinks on flights and expense cards.
Business class
Exactly. There was literally just carte blanche to drink. And meetings were like, let's have the meetings in the pub. It's a brainstorm. Get the beers in. Or the clients coming in for the afternoon, get them in early and we'll take them for lunch. And then the meeting didn't really happen, it would just stay in the pub. Rewards dinners and hospitality. It was a bit relentless, actually, but at the time it felt great.
And looking back, do you, because I've got this kind of think back, we did do a lot, and definitely in sales, when we took clients out and things like that, we'd be, going for pub lunches and things like that. But looking back, do you think that, because I know my own creativity was stifled by alcohol, do you think that those types of meetings could have been more productive had they not been, in the pub arena and alcohol involved?
I think there is an undeniable truth about alcohol, that it lowers your inhibitions. So if you're going to have one of those kind of meetings where you say no idea is a bad idea and let's have a brainstorm, then the chances are, some people who would otherwise feel a little bit more nervy about speaking up might throw out some cracking ideas at the beginning. But we also know, when you've only got to listen to people who are drinking, how quickly the kind of conversation declines, the quality of conversation and thought declines as the sort of evening goes on. As do the ideas. I mean, it's not the creative catalyst that we think it is.
No, but I think also, if it's just to kind of entice a new client in, it's like, let's wine and dine them, and we're not really talking about ideas at that point, but it's like, let's show them a good time and hopefully we'll get that contract. And that's, I'm sure it still goes on as well, doesn't it? Yeah.
Well, I knew from my days at Rover that the part of my week that I enjoyed the most was going down to London to see the advertising agency. So I knew that clients who are now, my clients and coming in to see us really enjoyed that part of the week. They enjoyed coming in and forgetting about, costs and spreadsheets and all of that, and, problems they had with the production life. They wanted to come in and talk about the sexy world of advertising and be wined and dined. And so that's what we did. And it was like, making deals and new business and stuff, but actually it was just showing clients that you were investing time and money in them. And that unfortunately was, and probably still is, the most obvious way to do it. So yeah, it was.
It's what they expect, isn't it? Is if there is money involved,
Yeah,
then they want to be winding down because they're going to put money into this company for you guys to run their ads and all that. So they're like, well, you need to show us the money, show us the good time before we're going to
absolutely,
come and spend it.
absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, it's silly. It's just it's just the way it's just the dynamic, and I think it probably still is a very prevailing dynamic. But that is effectively then how I spent about oh goodness me, over a decade doing that sort of thing in London, and again drinking heavily. Yeah.
And what would you say your kind of habits were at that point? I mean, you're saying, finish work at what, like 5, 6 o'clock, and then not getting home till 11. Were you eating, or was it
Yeah, I
just
was. I was.
dinner? Yeah.
Yeah, there'd always be. So there was always a thing in the office where at about 6 o'clock, or even maybe a little bit later, there was a sense that if you were working late, you could expense your dinner.
Right.
So a lot of people actually hung around to sort of
Yeah.
expense their dinner. Now, I wasn't necessarily doing that, but I was definitely
Not every
hanging
night.
around. Not every night, most nights. But I was
Yeah.
definitely sort of hanging around because there was also an unspoken sort of agreement that the fridge could be opened and the beers would come out because we would have had alcohol accounts. One of the agencies I worked in had the Stella
Yeah.
Artois account. So the fridge is in the office, which is jam-packed full of Stella Artois. So, we would have gone, oh, look at it, it's 6 o'clock. Sun's over the yard arm. Let's have a drink. And then you sit there and go, oh, look, now it's that time when we can expense our meal. So
Yeah.
that creep would happen a lot. But actually, I was just quite a big one for going and standing around on, outside one of the many pubs in Soho and drinking, and then going and trying a new restaurant or something. So
Because what are you going to do when you go home? Do you know what I mean? As you say, it's an empty flat, and you're kind of like, well, this is where all the movers and shakers are, my friends, my family almost. It's
yeah,
like, well, why would you be going home? And I'm guessing at that age, the hangovers the next day probably aren't that bad. You're probably feeling a little
it
bit
was
ropey, but
survivable.
definitely not. Yeah, exactly. And plus, especially when you can either go out for lunch and
Yeah.
expense it because you're kind of brainstorming, or you just have to wait till the end of the day and then you're back on it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. You're truly in that cycle of, if you're dipping the next morning, you know exactly how to get back to the sort of the normal before you go all over again. So it
Yeah.
was looking back. I mean, it's obviously bloody unhealthy, but it
Of
was
course.
survivable.
But I don't know if you knew, because I didn't know the dangers until I got sober. I didn't know that it's linked to, I didn't know it was a carcinogen. I didn't know it was linked to 7 types of cancer. I had no idea that it was almost as, if not as bad as smoking. It's insane. I didn't know at the
No,
time.
I think, you sort of vaguely have have a sense that it's probably calorific and why you're feeling a bit bloaty and
Yeah.
why you're dehydrated and stuff, but you don't know. I certainly didn't know the ins and outs. I certainly didn't know it to that level. Had I known, would it have made a difference? I don't know.
I
I,
still
I
smoked, and there was photos on the packets that told me that, but at least I was like, well, that probably won't happen till I'm much older, and I will have given up by then because smoking's just what I'm doing in my 20s and 30s. I mean, I gave up when I was about 36, 37, I think, but
yeah.
I did give up, but I knew the dangers, but yeah, I was still partaking. Yeah, it's
I I know that at that stage in my life, I think there was still some kind of undercurrents of loneliness and neediness,
mhm.
and I I think that need would have overridden any knowledge that I had had at that stage in my life about the health impact,
Yeah,
largely
sure.
because I was at a certain stage in life, which we all go through. It was all very self-absorbed. There were no little people who you were responsible for. Children hadn't, I wasn't in a relationship. I didn't feel responsible towards anyone, just myself. And what I wanted was to have fun.
Yeah, and we
And
think we're invincible at that age as
I
well.
think we're
You know.
invincible. I'm living day to day
Yeah.
for the giggles. And that's exactly what it was until it wasn't.
Well, exactly. Now, Anna, tell me, you did take on quite a few alcohol contracts, didn't you, when you were down there? Because I've heard it on your podcast and on Dave's about just the kind of madness that goes on in those kind of discussions on how, like, I think pinking the drinks you've mentioned
Yeah.
and trying to get. Anyway, you tell us what kind of from the forefront what that's like in those advertising meetings with alcohol companies.
Well, I mean, I mean, every big agency will want a car account, a finance account, maybe an airline account, a big drinks account.
Yeah.
And the big ones, the ones really worth having, the ones with the very, very deep pockets, are things like
Yeah.
the Diageos of this world, where they've got multiple brands across lots of different sectors, so beers and spirits and all sorts. And to be honest, the objectives within those meetings wouldn't have been any different from any other type of industry. So any advertiser, any marketer wants to go, if I spend this amount of money, how much is it going to pay me back? How much is my return of investment going to be? So if I spend £10 million on a campaign, is it going to return me £30 million in sales? That doesn't really matter whether you're selling a Volvo or whether you're selling beers.
Yeah.
So it's very, very commercial, and it's incredibly strategic. Who am I going to get to buy this product? How am I going to convince them that their life is not complete unless my brand is in it? How am I going to make them aspire to this brand? What emotions am I going to play on? What levers do I have to pull? Why are they going to choose me instead of a different brand? So those conversations aren't just sort of, skirting around the edges and the margins of the meetings. These are what the meetings are all about.
Yeah.
Who are we going to pull in? How are we either going to create new drinkers, convert current drinkers from one brand to another, create more opportunities, more events and occasions that people associate with our drink? How are we going to, probably the most sinister of all, draw in a younger audience, even though we're not supposed to be advertising to them overtly before the watershed and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
So, every brand running big campaigns, as I say, regardless of what industry they're in, really, are having those conversations. I think it just takes on something of a more sinister edge when it's something
Because
that's really not very good for you. Do you know
yeah,
what I mean?
if you've got a car company and they're saying, right, we've got these 15 and 16-year-olds, like we've got a 15-year-old and he's obviously, actually you can drive at 16 in the Isle of Man, it's not 17, but he's obviously already, excited about getting a car. And of course, car manufacturers can advertise and start making them look all sleek and nice for young people. Obviously, they're not legally supposed to drive until they're 16 here, 17 in the UK, but that doesn't have that same sinister connotation as somebody marketing directly to a 14-year-old to,
Yeah.
get them early.
I think, the conversations that you're referring to, like, ones I've had on those other sort of podcasts, really, really come to bear for me now. The big sort of moment for me was obviously, I helped when I worked on alcoholic. I didn't work on alcohol accounts all the time. I worked on a whole range of different accounts.
Sure.
But when I worked on alcohol accounts, I did obviously help construct the stories that help sell alcohol and position it a certain way. I regret that. I can sort of look back now and say I don't necessarily regret my own drinking because A, I had a laugh when it was fun, and B, it's part of my story now, and my own sort of way out of it has created the person who I am. But I do regret marketing it, because I look at it now and I think, God, there's so much I didn't know.
Yeah.
There's so much I didn't know. I would never, have advertised cigarettes, ever. I would have stood up in an agency and said, I'm not your girl. You need to find another planner on this one. I'm not doing it. But I did alcohol.
But I think
just didn't know.
you didn't know exactly, and that's the same as me. I would have been like, because everybody is so against smoking now, because I don't think you're not allowed to advertise it in this country. You haven't for years. They had that slow kind of I remember Silk Cut were really clever with their advertising because you weren't allowed
Yeah.
to show people smoking, but they had all these arty,
So
adverts and
that's
whatnot.
literally, yeah.
Yeah, but I stop me if I'm wrong, but I believe alcohol companies have got what's the word? They're like they don't have any. The government doesn't have any say in what they're allowed to advertise. What's the word?
Well, they've got they've got very. It's not a very regulated
That's it,
industry.
self-regulated.
It's
Yeah,
they're
yeah.
self-regulated. So there are. I mean, it's an absolute joke, to be honest. The self-regulation is basically drinking companies are supposed to come together with a bit of a conscience and advise people to drink responsibly. And, but at the same time, they are hugely driven by this return on investment. They have no interest whatsoever in reducing the amount of alcohol that people drink. Their only interest is on increasing the amount of alcohol, the frequency and the amount that people drink. So the self-regulation piece is just a joke. And had there had to be health warnings associated with advertising, as there clearly should be, health warnings, mental health warnings, all of them, had there meant to be those, I think a few more people might have gone, I don't really feel very good about working on these accounts.
Yeah, like
But
you didn't with cigarettes.
exactly. But as it was, I was a real drinker. So that's great fun working on a brand that you actually really like as well. That's the real dream, because now it doesn't even feel like work.
Yeah, and it's guessing it's a great financial reward as well with such a big client and things like that as well.
Absolutely. So the self-regulation that happens around the alcohol industry is just, it's very, very ineffectual. And besides which, they're not allowed to do things like advertise on television before certain times. They're not allowed to appeal directly towards children under a certain age. But the whole beauty of advertising, the whole potency of advertising, is the subconscious and ambient effect it can have. So sponsorships around big football competitions, sponsorships around big music. This isn't advertising in the form that gets censored or regulated. There's nothing to stop that kind of promotion, but it's everywhere.
Yeah.
And it's being picked up on whether you're 10 years of age or 30 years of age. So it's a bit, it's a bit dodgy, to say the least.
I think if you did, and I'm sure people have, a survey of maybe 12 and under children and gave them a board with all different drinks logos on it, and they'd probably be able to at least pick out more than half of them, your Carlsbergs or your Smirnoffs, just from the actual, not the actual wording, but the logo, the picture,
The
or whatever.
logo,
I'm sure they'd be
the
able,
identity.
because it's everywhere. Yeah. And it's, so the thing, I mean, the self-regulation is, I'd read that the majority of the big alcohol firms, they are reliant on, and I mean, I know I'm saying it, but it's probably, well, of course they do. They rely on the heavy drinkers, so the problematic drinkers, because they are their biggest customers. So they don't have to worry about that, because almost as if, well, they're kind of addicted, they're taking care of themselves. It's like, how can we get the growth? How can we get new people in? Because obviously, like in a car manufacturer, you want people to be buying your brand, and you want to get more people driving, but it's with alcohol, it's like, let's get people in younger, and it's
I mean, every industry has its kind of challenging dynamic. So, for example, I mean, I know this isn't what we're here to talk about. The car industry, for example, will have its own issues at the moment because, fewer teenagers are passing their driving tests because there's such a backlog, and therefore fewer getting on the road, and the insurance is really high, so people aren't buying their first cars. So they have their own industry dynamics to be concerned about. The drinks industry, very, very frightened about the alcohol-free movements. Very, very scared about sober curiosity And, you know, the overwhelming statistics that say that the younger generation are drinking less. Now, they clearly have an interest in reversing that or pushing against that dynamic. The heavier drinkers in the UK would be my generation. I'm 54. I'm slap bang in the middle of the people that they don't have to care about. Because, you know, until sort of 5 or 6 years ago, I was drinking like a fish and upholding their profits very nicely. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Um,
And
but
I'm sure a lot of your friends and peers are still not drinking heavily, but they're still having glasses of wine here, celebrations, all that kind of stuff. But you're right. I think the younger generation aren't doing it as much. And
yeah, well, it's funny because I've got to still read it. I've got a research report in my inbox that I really want to dig into because there's something in it about the fact that trend might be slowing down a little bit. So the sort of the non-drinking cohort, the sort of the younger 18 to 24-year-olds who haven't been drinking as much, looks like the growth of that cohort might be sort of slowing down a little bit.
So and probably big alcohol fighting against it.
Yeah, well, they've got they've definitely got an interest in making sure that there is there's two things. They either have to try and convince that audience to drink and provide them with the kind of the products and the brands and entice them to do so, or the big alcohol companies themselves have got to invest a huge amount of money in the production of new drinks that do fit the bill, functional drinks or nootropic kind of drinks and things like that, and that's not their centre of expertise. So they'd rather carry on with the drinking game, to be honest.
Yeah, and I mean, you know, not good luck to them, but I think they're going to struggle because Ireland started it, Canada started putting labels on the bottle saying this may lead to cancers and things like that. And I think that's, you know, the UK, especially England, will be last on the kind of boat for that one. But it will happen, whether it's in the next 10 years or 15 years. But I think we are going to come down that road because there's no denying it. It's just when the government are going to get their finger out and start owning up to it, because let's be honest, they're making an absolute ton off of the tax on it. So
this is it, and
why would they want to stop it?
Because they make money on it every year, if they stopped it, it would have very immediate problems, you know, within their term of government. So no government is very keen at all on doing anything about it. They really aren't. So they talk about wanting to reduce health harms. But they're not really doing the key thing which could reduce health harms, which is greatly restrict the availability and the marketing of advertising. I'm not going to do it.
It's crazy, and it's like, well, it's that way up of, you know, how much are you spending on the NHS to treat these people, and fights and you know, domestic violence that's happening, all related to alcohol. They're not probably making much more. If anything, they're probably at a loss from what they make off of it compared to what's happening. But where do you just stop that?
There's a massive deficit. That the cost of alcohol harm in the UK far outweighs the Treasury takings in terms of their revenues from it. And we pick that up. We pick up the deficit as a taxpayer. We pick that up. So
and you'd think that these people would be... Yeah, they'd be able to go, right, okay, if you know that and now I know that, then why are they not going, right, let's do something about that? But Anna, so you were saying, how long are you sober now? You said 5-6 years?
It's coming up to 6 years.
Wow,
sort of time of year about 6 years ago.
And how did that come about? What was it that kind of got you to that point and thought enough's enough?
I just couldn't do it anymore. My own relationship with myself, my physical health, my mental health mainly, I was absolutely exhausted. I mean, I've been through like years of drinking and that sort of horrible internal argument with yourself around, you know, get a grip, you need to moderate, sort your life out, you know, what the heck are you doing, and all that sort of stuff. And it was just... things were coming to a head, and I just no dramatic rock bottom, thank the Lord, any sort of big catastrophic drama. It was just, I can't do this anymore, and an epiphany that looked like me playing my life forward, and I looked at this kind of two options.
Yeah.
If I go down this road, I'm not going to see old age. I'm probably going to screw up every relationship that I've got, even particularly with myself and others, and it's no life.
Yeah.
It's not the life I want, and I just had to do something about it.
And I know this is, one of the reasons why I do the podcast, because I was rock bottom. I was rock bottom, I don't know, 3 or 4 times. I kept on thinking, how can I get, I can get lower, I can keep digging that further. It was bottles of vodka a day, drinking from first thing in the morning before my eyes were even open. But in doing the podcast, I want people to be watching this and listening to this and thinking, I need to nip this in the bud before I get to where Jimmy was. Do you know what I mean? And I think that's 100%. What people are, this sober curiosity movement that's happening, the sober community that we're involved in, it's grown phenomenally in the past 5 years that I've been involved. And I know it's going to even, grow even bigger in the next few years going on.
I mean, I coach now, as you know, and I basically, people say to me, Anna, this is how much I drink and this is how frequently I drink.
Yeah.
But I'm not, it doesn't feel, is it bad enough? Is it bad? Is it a problem? And I'm like, well, does it feel like a problem? Because what are you waiting for? Yeah. The car crash or the loss of, a marriage, a relationship. What is it going to, what's the signal going to be? What's the
where
thing?
do you draw that line?
Where do you draw that line? And I completely flip it. And I really, as yourself, in an ambition to try and help people nip it in the bud before it gets too bad, I asked the question, which is not like, how bad is your drinking? The question is your life good enough?
Yeah.
Like, is your life good enough? Because if it's not, and you're a heavy drinker, the chances are it is affecting you in so many ways. Some that you'll be able to put your finger on, and some that you just don't realise. So it's not about how bad it is, it's whether your life could be better. And that's such an important distinction that can, because you don't have to have a big drinking problem.
Yeah.
Sorry, go on.
I know, I was going to say, I've never really thought about it in those terms before, because there's that old saying, if you think you've got a problem with alcohol, then you've got a problem with alcohol. Do you know what I mean? If even the slightest little inkling in your head thinking that, then you probably do. It doesn't have to be like, 10 bottles to the wind. It could just be like you go out one night a week and it's causing a negative impact and you're not getting on in your job, your life, your relationships or whatever. Then that is holding you back, because my life, there were so many things that I knew were being caused harm by the alcohol. But then when I stopped doing it, it was like all these other things started almost like floating up around going, oh my God, I didn't realize life could be this good. And all I did was give up one thing, It's mad.
That's why it's, the unexpected joy, isn't it? Because you just don't realize. And, people sort of say, well, I drink X, Y, and Z, but I don't black out. And I'm like, okay. But they go, so I say, well, what pain points, what pain is it causing in your life? And they go, well, my relationship with my husband, or my this and my that. And I'm like, well, that sounds like a problem. It's not a problem as in a drinking problem with a capital P, as the world has defined it, but it sounds like problem. It's problematic. And if it's problematic in this life where we have just one shot at it, then it's worth looking at. And for some people, Jimmy, that could be, well, my life's pretty good. But I'll be like, but could it be great?
Yeah.
Or I'm doing really well at work. I'm a senior manager, and I'm like, well, but are you where you wanted to be? Yeah, it's like literally just have a look at whether it's impacting you, because if it is, it's a problem.
It's a problem. Yeah, absolutely. And I'm going to be starting sober coaching training in April, so I'll be doing a similar thing. But I think that's it. It's more for the people that are grey area drinkers and
Yep.
people that are successful. Not all people that are successful, but there's people that are more so hiding it because they haven't hit that rock bottom, because they're successful, they're doing well in their jobs, and they've got money coming in,
Yeah.
and they're holding the job down. But it's like, could they be even more successful? That's
Should they
where
be,
it's at.
if you're 'cause we're all sort of young and we have ambitions and desires and a view of what life would look like at a certain age, and it's like if you've lost sight of that altogether, then question whether alcohol's got anything to do with that. If you're not where you wanted to be, or if you're not the person you imagined you would be, if you're not living by the values that you thought you should or would be living by, have a look and work out whether alcohol's got anything to do with that. Because all of these things impact on us big time, big time.
Massively.
So it's just worth exploring. And I think even that language is really important. It's worth exploring, and to start looking and to start being curious is not a commitment to stop. It's just a commitment to find out.
To find out, and that's it. I always say to people, I've got a little group with sober seasons, and I say to people, dry January or sober October is not long enough. So give up for like from the solstice to the equinox and onwards, 3 months. That's when you'll start to notice the difference. And if you don't feel any different or whatever, then crack on, carry on drinking if that's not causing you a problem. But at least you've given that a chance, because a month is not enough in my book. But Anna, do you regret getting sober?
No.
No.
No, I don't. No, I don't. I'm incredibly grateful that I am actually.
Yeah.
And it's opened up a whole world of things for me that rekindled my interest in lots of things and put me on a completely different career path. I've never met a single person for whom alcohol freedom or sobriety hasn't opened doors.
Yeah.
And I do say that all the time to my clients. It's not what I know. It sounds really corny.
No, but I'm the same, and it's like
it's not a destination. It's a gateway. It opens up so much more. I mean, you said it. You started this podcast saying, your hobbies. You've kind of gone back to photography. You do this and this now.
Yeah.
You've come back. You've opened back up things that you forgot you liked, or for a while, quite a long while, you found something
long time
more.
Yeah.
But it's game on again, and it's so much more fulfilling. It's so much more nourishing in every sense of the word.
It's just like that whole thing in, I think it's The Alchemist, where it says, the universe kind of manifests itself. The universe opens up doors for you because it sees that you're trying, and it's like the amount of doors that's opened for me in the past 5 years is just unbelievable, because I've done the work as well,
Yeah, and now the coaching as well. So I
now
mean,
the coaching, and I'm peer mentoring at my local addiction charity. I got married to my beautiful wife Jen in the summer there, and all that wouldn't have been happening if I'd been still drinking.
Exactly, it's just
no way.
It's a snowball. It gathers. It's great. Great things. Doors open, and and you've got the clarity to see the opportunities when they come along.
Yeah. And all we can do is just keep kind of banging the drum, because we're not trying to ram it down people's throats, but it's saying like, you know what, just try this way of life, because almost to me it's like, the Matrix has been revealed, and I see from what the lie that kind of alcohol is now, and the dangers that it is. But it's, we can only not shout it from the rooftops, but shout it to the people that are listening. So yeah,
absolutely.
Is there anything else you want to add, Anna? It's been an absolute pleasure having you on and getting to know you.
No, well, if people want to know more about me, they can always visit my website. So I've my podcast and my website have got the same name. It's the Big Drink Rethink.com. All my coaching options are on there. My book, I haven't mentioned my book. I've got a book that has just been, January the 8th that was published. So What Are You Thirsty For is also
It's
there.
in my list to add. Have you done the Audible version yet? Is there an Audible
I've done the
version?
Audible version,
Yeah.
so if people aren't bored by the sound of my voice off my podcast, they can buy the Audible.
I just find it easier to listen to books because I'm a gardener
Yeah,
as well, so I have that on my ears during
yeah,
the day when I'm
perfect.
listening. But I'll put all of those details in the description of the podcast as well, Anna.
Amazing.
So yeah,
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 perfect.
really appreciate it. Well, thank
Yeah,
you very much for coming on, and
yeah, no, thank you,
we'll
Jimmy.
chat soon.
Yeah, much appreciated. It's been super. Thank you very much for having me.
Cheers. Thank you.
All right, bye bye.
Yeah, thank you so much, Anna. I said at the beginning that Anna was in the Daily Mail, but I meant to also say that she was in the Times as well. So not just one major newspaper, but two. And they're both fascinating articles, and really just about, like, not people thinking, I'm only having one glass of wine a day, or I'm just having a couple at the weekend or whatever. But it's more about how just one single glass of wine a day can have an impact, and have a negative impact on your health, on your well-being, and all of these types of things. So yeah, just fascinating articles. I think you can find them online as well. I'll try and find them and put them in the show notes as well. I'm really looking forward to Anna's book. As I say, I've got a few books to kind of get through before I start on that one, but just excited for it. So lots of things happening for Anna, and it was great to just kind of have her give up a bit of time to come on the podcast and have a chat with us, which I just loved every part of the story, because again, going back to that whole thing about alcohol companies being self-regulation for their advertising, as she said, it's not working. Like, they're all meant to get together and go, right, how can we make it safe for the people out there, let them not drink to excess and all that. But it's like, well, why would they want that? Because that's where their profits are coming in from, and it's like, that's not the case. And the government, as I said, was like, they don't want to step in because, excuse me, they're making a massive windfall on the tax from alcohol. But as Anna said, they're making a deficit because of the harm that alcohol brings, not just with the health implications, but with the the domestic abuse, the fights at the weekend in the pubs and all that. And they're actually in a deficit. So for any government, and then we're the ones that are making up the shortfall for that, that's put on our tax. And I don't live in the UK, but I'm sure it's not much different over here. But the thing that gets me is that no government wants to take it on, that they're starting doing that. We're not saying outlaw alcohol. We're not saying stop it tomorrow. We're saying put warnings on the bottles and let people make up their own mind, so that gradually the numbers of people drinking and causing harm to themselves is going to come down. But it's not going to happen overnight. But they've obviously got some agreement with the alcohol companies that they cannot do that, because, as I say, it's not going to destroy their tax income overnight. It's going to go down eventually, but not overnight. And they will have time to work out what they need to do in place of that. But actually, they'll probably start seeing the money that they're spending on the NHS come back up, because not actually they're spending, that they're going to come back down because they're not spending as much, because people are getting healthier, people are not being as violent at the weekends or in domestic abuse and things like that. I know I'm talking like in a kind of sweeping kind of ideal world, but these things aren't going to happen overnight, is what I'm trying to say. And if the government doesn't make a stand now and start doing something, then when is it going to happen? So I just, these things, and this is why I had to get Anna on the podcast, because I had no idea, and it just infuriates me more and more the more I get to know about how much this lie is being fed to everyone, and they're not doing anything about it because money, Again, you want to talk about conspiracy? This is the biggest conspiracy that's going on. So I just think it's unbelievable. And then, and obviously Anna, getting sober and starting to kind of, well, she does, sober coaching. She's got the book, the Big Drink Rethink podcast as well, and on her website. So as I said, I'll put all these in the show notes, but she's doing amazing now, and, like, Anna didn't get to rock bottom, but she just got to the point where it was enough, and she didn't really want to do it anymore. So she had that kind of epiphany and decided to knock it on the head. So yeah, thanks guys. It's been an absolute blast editing and listening to Anna's story again. So I hope you guys get a lot from it. If you do, please share it. If you know that anyone's going to benefit from it, then send it on to them and share it on your socials. Yeah, and put 5-star reviews on, or one if you didn't like it, but please comment and let me know why, or comment if you really enjoyed it, because it just helps people know what they're getting into with the podcast. And I know we're going to be growing massively this year, because I can see from the start of this year that it's already, people are coming back, and more people are starting to pick it up and listen to it. So thank you to everyone that's been listening to it, and people that are in the future that are only just picking it up now and listening to this episode, thank you as well. Yeah, until next week, guys, stay safe, stay sober, and stay supportive. Peace.